Yep.
Sounds good. All right. Well, good evening, everyone. This is the Education Policy Committee meeting. It will be on the Northern Lehigh School District Media YouTube channel. It is being recorded this evening and posted again on that YouTube channel. Just to go over the agenda, there's just a couple items. We'll start with education. Dr. Stoker will start us off with the spring and summer programs for all of the buildings.
Thank you, Mrs. Zusak. This evening, we are going to start with what our summer learning opportunities will look like for each of our school buildings. So in order to address the pandemic and what could possibly be learning loss for our students, we've been looking at how they've been progressing throughout the school year and certainly want to offer some programming during the summertime for any students that may have a possible learning loss. So I'm going to have each of our principals is going to go through, and then Mrs. Dada will talk about special education. But we're going to talk about what that may look like in each of the levels in each of the buildings. Before we do jump into that, I will say that our elementary program between our Peters and Slatington is going to be a combined program. And then you'll see some similarities between the secondary programs between the middle school and the high school, but they are going to be a little bit different. But across the board, we tried to keep things as similar as possible to give all students and all families an opportunity to participate in a similar program, but obviously recognizing that students are at different developmental levels, and we have students at the elementary, second, and secondary levels. So we've created a chart for that. So I'm going to actually present that chart. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Mr. Schneiderite to start, and Mr. Pine if you're going to do it jointly.
Yeah, so that's actually a great transition. Everyone can hear me, correct? Okay. Just because Ms. Schneiderite and I talked earlier about how do we balance out and figure out who says what, and those couple of small differences, we decided those would be the transition. So I'm going to kick things off and just kind of talk about sort of, we planned this whole thing around evidence-based approaches. And so we did a lot of research about what works in summer programs. So there are a lot of details in here. And if you have questions about any of them, I'm happy to answer them. That we really wanted a program that was not just worthy of local coverage in a newspaper, but that, you know, was kind of worthy of being in a journal, that you know, I mean, really was going to get the results that we need to see for our kids who participate. So it's starting off, one of those things is the amount of time and the amount of time that we spend on doing it and the approach to it. So we're looking at an 8:30 to 1:30 program. That's from arrival to final bus leaving. That's the general idea. And I'll talk a little bit later about the schedule and kind of what we put into there. We're really looking at a whole child approach. Location is going to be Slatington Elementary School. There were a lot of reasons for that. We have other programs running at Slatington Elementary, such as ESY and our STEAM camp, and that provided the best opportunity for integration of students in those programs and things like that to participate as part of this program. It will include both breakfast and lunch, so it will include meals, and our targeted student population, as you're going to see throughout here, and this just answers to our projections in terms of staffing and finances and things like that. Right now, our target, we'd love to see 90 students at least participate. And so we've planned out for smaller numbers and larger numbers in increments of 45, but we'd love to see 90 participate between the two buildings. For curriculum and assessment purposes, as you know, many of you know, at Slatington Elementary, we use the STAR assessment pretty faithfully as a way of gauging progress with students. We'd like to continue to use that. The nicest thing that'll provide is sort of a pre and post, and also a way of looking at a control group, because we'll have students who are in the program, those who are not. We'll have the May results, and then we'll have the results at the beginning of the year. So we are looking to use that, but also one of the resources we're looking to use, Imagine Learning, and this is across the entire thing, comes with, it's an adaptive program, so it comes with assessment opportunities, and then it comes with a wealth of data that we'll be able to read throughout the course of it in order to monitor student progress and do goal setting. So that will be a big piece of this in that regard. The curriculum, we're really looking at a goal-based curriculum. So we're looking at having students and teachers set goals and trying to individuate as much as possible within that period of time, which when we get to the staffing that Mr. Schneider will talk about, our student to teacher ratios reflect that. And then the only other thing is at Slatington Elementary, we are looking to use the zones of regulation with our students, which is a curriculum that's social and emotional learning based. And again, that goes back to what I was saying about whole child. We really believe that is something that we need to address. In order for students to be successful learners, they need to be able to self-regulate and to take pride in their own ability to do so. And zones of regulation will provide us with a primer to do that. And with that, I'm going to take our first natural transition and pass it off to Mr. Schneider.
Great segue, Mr. Pine. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see you all. To continue on, I love that Mr. Pine keeps saying whole child. The idea of our program is not that it's 6 hours of drilling math facts and phonics rules. It really is addressing the entire spectrum of education and touching on everything that is vital, we believe, to address learning loss. Looking at the idea of how we will assess students at Peters Elementary School during this program, we will be giving our DIBELS assessments as well as our Easy CBM math. So that is ELA and math at the very end of May, which obviously is just a few weeks away from the summer. So the idea is we could use those as basically the beginning of the summer as well, and then benchmark those, or assess those students at the end of the summer to see growth. As Mr. Pine mentioned, the new platform Imagine Learning, which I think is going to be a great tool and resource moving ahead because it adapts to the student need. We believe that will provide us everyday formative data, to sort of, assess growth as we go through and help sort of guide where this program takes us. When we look at staffing, again, Mr. Pine mentioned that we were targeting 90 students. Mr. Pine did a great job sort of wielding through what we would need for 45 students, 135 students, close to 200 students. The good thing about ours, it's not targeted to a certain amount of students. As of this moment, we don't know what it can be, and we're not looking to basically say, okay, if 91 students sign up, we can't take the 91st student. So we're basically going to see what we get and build the staffing around that. The idea is one coordinator to oversee the K through 6 program. On top of that, 4 teachers, 4 paraprofessionals, and 1 dedicated special education teacher on top of the 4. So it's 5 total teachers, 1 being a special education teacher, 4 paraprofessionals, and 4 student helpers. Perhaps, Mr. Pine, it'll be better for you to address what they will be doing within the midst of the schedule as you go over it later. But that is our ideal staffing for 90 students. Again, that could be adjusted for, if 200 students sign up, we can take a look at how we could make that work. Obviously, that would impact the money that goes into it. So when we take a look at the next portion, the estimated cost of the program. Now, just to be really clear, if there are any parents watching this or any, parents that might be watching the video, we've been sharing out that it's the estimated cost to the parent is $0. This is the cost of what it would come out of, and certainly Dr. Stoker would be more apt to talk about, the grant money and the, how this is being paid for. But again, the cost to every student would be $0, which, I think is certainly, ideal in this day and age. The cost to put this together for staffing, we're looking at that 1 coordinator, 6 hours per day. That coordinator would work the entire 23 days or the entire 6-week program. There would be a completion bonus of $1,250, looking at a final total of $5,390. Plus an onboarding day. That's something we've discussed as a professional development day that has yet to be determined how long or when that would occur. When we take a look at the teachers, 5 teachers, again, including 4 classroom teachers and 1 special education teacher, we're looking at building their day as a 4-hour day at the curriculum rate of $30, 23 days for the entire program. a 6-week program, excuse me, plus a $1,000 completion bonus per teacher, with a total of $18,800 plus the onboarding day. The paraprofessionals, the 4 of those people would be paid at their contracted rate, which varies between $15 and $20. We're looking at utilizing them for 5 hours per day. And again, Mr. Pine can show you how they'll be used, both teachers, paras, as well as the student helpers throughout the school day, or the online learning experience, or the learning experience day, Mr. Pine. So again, paraprofessionals contracted rate 5 hours per day times 23 days plus a $750 completion bonus. And we're looking at a sort of a range between $9,900 and $12,200 for the total cost of paraprofessionals. And finally, student helpers. We're looking at perhaps high school or college age students who are interested in making some money over the summer and supporting what we'll be doing. Those student helpers, we're looking at 5 hours per day, $10 per hour times 23 days, or a total of $4,600. Totaling that up, it's just a hair over. It's almost.
Mr. Snyderite, I'm sorry, you just put yourself on mute. Sorry.
My mouse is way over here. I'm not sure how I did that. Oh, I must have done it this way. My apologies. Thank you, Gail. So again, we're looking at, for the total cost of the elementary school program for staffing, to be just a hair under $41,000, and that's in the worst case scenario. Again, there's a range of costs for the paraprofessionals. So, but assuming that $12,200, and again, that is not including the onboarding day. And again, that's assuming 90 students. If the student, the amount of students who sign up for the program increases, we could look to add additional staff. Or again, if there is less interest and it's less than 90, we can look at utilizing the staff that would be needed, and it would be a lesser cost. Okay. Moving on, at Peters Elementary School, because it's a little different than secondary and some of the upper elementary schools. There's no credits you earn for Peters Elementary School. It's not like a credit completion program. At Peters Elementary School, we're really assessing, student skill. We're assessing developmental level. Oftentimes on report cards, as you see, we do give letter grades. However, there are certainly below level, on level, above level, etc. So there'll be no impact on this. It's not like you'll pass a course for coming into this program. So don't think of it in the elementary school, especially at Peters Elementary School, as like a summer school program. Again, we're seeing the whole, and when we take a look at the schedule, I think that'll be very clear. Mr. Pine.
So I can't help myself but make a joke about the fact that you muted yourself when you hit the grand total. I feel so Slatington Elementary is not wildly different in the sense that this is not credit recovery. And the way I put this to parents, because we do have a number of students, probably about 10 to 12 students that right now we're really keeping an eye on as to whether or not we can in good conscience send them to the next grade, knowing that the learning loss has been what it has been this year. But what I have been saying to those parents is, obviously, because we deeply want to encourage them to be involved and get into this learning experience, is that we will look again in August, and we will meet again, and we will look at what is the data telling us. Is the data telling us that your child is going to be successful moving on to the next grade level, or is the data telling us that those gaps are just too great and the program may have made some impact, but it wasn't sufficient to make up for what was lost during the course of this year? So I hope you realize we're not really comfortable saying, do the program, you move on, because that may still set a child up for future failures. And we do not take that lightly. Retention is not an issue that we take lightly at all. And in the years I've been doing this, we have never retained a student because we've always been able to close that gap. I'm hoping that this summer program is the answer to that. That again, we are able to close that gap for these students who have missed so much just because of non-attendance and other issues. In terms of rules, so we're looking at daily attendance being an expectation. And again, that goes back to the research piece of this. We've really looked into this and what works. I hate to throw magic numbers out there. It's been a year of magic numbers, 6 feet, 15 minutes. But, you know, daily attendance, 20 days is what the research really says is where you see an impact, where you actually see effect among students. So right now, the numbers basically say that more than 3 absences, we should be putting our resources towards those who can show up for 20 days. So right now, that is our expectation. All school rules basically remain in effect. And I want to say that this is not going to be school. It is summer, and we recognize that. We've designed a program that we hope is attractive to students because of its recreational components and its social components and just kind of some of the differences in the ways that they're going to learn. But at the same time, you know, basic school rules will apply. We'll expect students to be responsible, be respectful, be safe, be proud, do all those things. So that's the rules. In terms of virtual options, so we've had a lot of talks about this, and this is kind of where we've settled on this. We've really noticed that virtual instruction has been part of the issue for a large number of our students. That, you know, that we have students who this has not been a great way for them to learn, and they've been forced into it because of situations over the course of the past year. We're really aiming for a program that gets kids into the building, that, you know, really does take advantage of the relationships that can be built in person. So right now, we're going to probably wait and see how the registrations turn out and see what the needs are, because we do also recognize there are people who aren't comfortable with that yet, and we want to provide an option for them. But I guess I just want to say we haven't planned that out yet, because we don't know what the demand is going to be for that, and we want to plan it based on that demand. And then transportation. So again, breakfast, lunch free. We are going to provide free transportation to students. And right now we are looking at trying to maintain transportation that is as close as humanly possible to what they expect in the course of the school year. But again, part of some of that planning is contingent on who gets involved, who actually decides to come. So now the fun part. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the schedule and how we structured this. And again, this is all based in what works. So we're really trying to emphasize that. And that whole child approach and school that is not school. I know those don't sound like very scientific terms, but that's how the research will classify it. School that's not school. That is what works. That is what actually gets gains with students. So we're looking at an arrival between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning that also includes breakfast. So buses arrive, and in that 30 minutes, they arrive, students eat breakfast, they have an opportunity somewhere within there, you know, we hope to socialize as well. Between 9 and 9:30, we're looking at an opening activity, and we're looking at a lot of options for this, but we really are trying to emphasize general wellness. You know, from activities that engage students in mindfulness to, you know, learning along the lines of the zones of regulation and using their own vocabulary to describe their feelings, their stressors, things like that. We're looking at a variety of activities like that. The 9:30 until 12:30 block, let's call it, that 3-hour block, that's where we're looking at 3 rotations of students. So the students will rotate between ELA, actually ELA is not the word I really mean, and that's the word that we commonly use, reading-based instruction. And the instruction that is really going to engage students in improving not only their independent reading, but their reading skills moving forward. Math-based instruction, and I say that too, again, the based part is the fact that it's not math class. It's going to be math-based instruction that are going to include best practices in instruction, and that won't always look exactly the way it does in a typical classroom. And then also a recreational component. And we are really trying to design those recreational components again around reinforcing the types of skills that we know students benefit from. If we're playing a game, it's articulation of the rules, it's adherence to the rules, it's, you know, expressing how they feel about the way something happened, and really trying to make that a little bit of that, and then just a little bit of free play, some free play in there. And then we end the day kind of similar to the way that we began it. We feed the students, we give them lunch, and then we have some sort of closing activity that's paired along with dismissal. And that closing activity, again, is probably not going to be directly academic in nature. It's going to be addressing other aspects of the child and the child's needs. That's actually it, unless you have anything to add, Mr. Schneider, right?
Nothing for me. Thank you, Mr. Pine.
I do just want to highlight that, we'll be talking about financially how much money this is going to cost for both programs, and it does come from the ESSERS grant. The 6-week program that we're looking to run, again, that's 6 weeks for 4 days a week, Monday through Thursday, from June 21st to July 8th, taking out the holiday for July 5th, and then again, July 12th through July 30th, so 2 3-week sessions that essentially add up to a 6-week program. We have a lot of money in our ESSERS grant, but we have a part of that ESSERS 3 grant that has to be used for learning loss. And right now that's close to about $600,000 that we have to spend. Those monies have to be expended by September 30th of 2024. So the programs that we're proposing this evening, and we'll jump into the secondary one in a minute, the programs that we're proposing for this evening, we're looking to run for the summer of 2021, but there's a possibility to run it for 2022, 2023, and also 2024. So we believe that we can cover this through that ESSERS learning loss funds for those 4 years. And then we would be looking possibly to, look at how the program has gone, what modifications we want to make as we move through each of those years, and then possibly building that into our budget beyond that to offer some sort of programming for students beyond the ESSERS 3 grant. So prior to us moving into the secondary piece of this, any questions from anybody, any feedback on the elementary part?
Dr. Stoker, this is Gail, and Mr. Schneiderite and Mr. Pine, you might be able to answer this. When the students are in, if there's 90 students in there with only those 4 or 5 teachers, are the grade levels all combined? Can you kind of explain how that education side of it's going to work if they're all together, all going to Slatington?
Gail, it's a great question. Right now, that's not determined. The good news about it, and that's a good thing. The good news about it, Dr. Stoker, would you be able to scroll down to the calendar again? The schedule toward the bottom of the page there. We're looking at, and this isn't differentiated by time, the idea that, let's say from 9:30 to 10:30, there's one group doing ELA, and that same group from 10:30 to 11:30 will be doing, a math-based instruction, and then from 11:30 to 12:30 doing recreation-based instruction. What those are is really going to be determined on who shows up. That could be K, 1, and 2 for Peters Elementary School. It could be a combination of grades at the Slatington Elementary School. It could also be skill-based. There are certainly second grade readers that may benefit from first grade reading instruction to practice some of the things that they perhaps need to catch up on due to learning loss. And there are probably first grade students who might be advanced readers that might fit more into that second grade. So instead of calling them, 1, 2, or K1 and 2, it might be something where we're looking at developing those blocks around specific skills. Right. So when we take a look at the students that are there, we're going to take a look at that data and work with the coordinator to sort of put the final spin on what that specifically those groupings could be. But I think it's great because the opportunity for, it's not a cut and paste kind of thing. It's basically we're going to build it around student need. And that gives us more of an opportunity to address the learning loss rather than a sort of a cookie cutter kind of approach.
Thank you.
Looks like Mrs. Martineau also has a question.
I do, thank you. I was wondering if their ancillary services will also be provided, like speech or any other, services that they get during the school year.
Absolutely. Mrs. Martineau, if we can just hold off on that question for a little while as we jump into our special education portion in a little while, Mrs. Dada is going to address those auxiliary services.
Okay.
Or related services. Okay. Any other questions on the elementary program? Okay. I believe that Mr. Hauser is going to cover both the middle school and high school programs for us this evening, so I will hand it over to Mr. Hauser.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker. Good evening, everybody. Good to see everybody. Mrs. Chamberlain and Mr. Velocity do send their regards, but they were unfortunately unable to be here this evening. The Secondary program, we're looking to house the entire program at the middle school. We felt that having everything under one roof would help with some of the management issues, and also help our teachers and coordinators better facilitate the program. So again, it will be over there. We have a time schedule that is set up very similar to the elementary, just adjusted a little bit, starting at 8 a.m. and then finishing things up with lunch by quarter after noon. We will have a breakfast and lunch option for students. And we are also considering, if you look at the note there, a part-time enrollment in our summer program. Part of that has to do with the nature of the secondary program being a little bit more credit recovery based, as opposed to skills building like we saw at the elementary level. So we are going to permit students to come in for courses that they need for the entire program. So that can look a little bit different based on the individual needs of the individual student. As far as the targeted students, we are looking to focus on those who have failed a course. At the middle school, we're also looking to target those students who are considered below grade level benchmark in their major classes. However, we're not going to turn anyone away. We do want as many students as possible to participate. And if we have students who want to come in to just to simply focus on their skills and getting ready for the next level, or to go back and get a refresher because part of the year they might have been virtual or hybrid and they want to get a little bit more concrete understanding, we can definitely make that available to those students at both the middle school and the high school level. High school specifically, we're looking to push credit recovery because we are beholden at the high school to credit requirements for graduation and progression with one's graduating class. So we do need to make sure that graduation required courses are at the passing level. We're looking to do pass-fail grades for all courses, and if a student does successfully remediate a course, on their transcript, they would receive a 60% as the grade of record. For curriculum and assessments, at the middle school, we are looking to implement the STAR assessments. We'd like to get a baseline assessment done in the month of May so we kind of have an idea of where all of the students are and we can properly prepare the middle school program. We'll also use STAR and the IXL platform throughout the summer program to assess where students are in a standards-based curriculum. That's going to help us specifically run progressive courses, one class and moving into another. A similar system will be used at the high school, but the platform we have decided to use is USA Test Prep. USA Test Prep is a bit of a misnomer. When the company was first out there, it was test preparatory resources. However, it does have many instructional-based resources on the platform as well, in courses that are more full rather than just test prep can be very easily designed. USA Test Prep does have enough offerings to successfully cover the bulk of the high school program of studies. We are confident at the middle school that we can have 4 major subjects instructed and also adding a special course in there to add some variety to the student's day and reinforce those valuable skills that are taught by our special subject teachers. There will be an end of course assessment in all classes as well to get an idea of the concepts that the students have mastered or improved upon throughout the course of the program. At the high school, we are confident we can run both beginning level ELA classes and advanced level. We believe we have enough staff to run English 1, 2, 3, and 4. For math, we believe that we'll be able to run Algebra 1 and also Geometry. We will run Civics and U.S. History. And we are also looking to add sciences to this with integrated science and biology being the focus. Also looking to get some foreign language instruction over the summer and potentially add in some electives as well. Electives will be very important for the high school program because there are elective credit requirements in our program of studies and under our policies for graduation. For staffing, there you can see what Dr. Stoker is presenting. These are tentative lists based on some interest surveys that we have put out in the buildings. So again, all major subjects at the high school, also looking to again include a special education teacher to assist really any student who is trying to get ahead in these classes, but particularly our IEP students as well. Those teachers we're ideally planning to have in like a co-teaching environment with our main teacher in the classroom. For estimated program costs, as you can see what Dr. Stoker is presenting, we will have a shared coordinator, grades 7 to 12, with the stipend being listed there at $5,390. As far as teachers go, a little bit different between the buildings. Middle school, we're looking somewhere around 5 to 6 teachers, with that total coming between 23 and 28,000. At the high school, again, due to what we need to offer for credit recovery, what we ideally offer, we would have approximately 9 teachers, with the cost around 43,000. Paraprofessional in each building, we would like to have 1 paraprofessional helping the middle school students and 1 para helping the high school students. So an approximate cost of $2,300 in those. Dr. Stoker, if you can scroll down the grading, please. Thank you. I mentioned this a little bit at the beginning. What we are doing at the secondary level, because we have to track specifically grades for credit purposes and also for data gathering for progressive classes. Again, if a student who has failed a class comes in, does credit recovery, they would earn a 60% on their transcript, and this stands in line with our past practices. The rules for the program, we have something very similar to the elementary level where we have guidelines for both attendance and discipline. What we have noted here for the secondary level is that daily attendance is expected and more than 3 absences will result in removal from the program. The reason we wrote that language into our proposal is because we saw a very high correlation between a student failure in a course and that student's attendance. So we do want to make sure that we try to eliminate that barrier and explain to students that we need you here if we are going to apply credit for your educational progression. We also have infractions of levels 1 to 2 as per our student handbooks, or 1 infraction of levels 3 and 4. Level 3 and 4 infractions are major suspension infractions that would likely put the student in a normal setting during a normal school year out of school for 3 or more days anyway. So that's why we wrote that into there. The virtual option is exactly the same as what Mr. Schneiderite and Mr. Pine described, as is transportation. Our schedule is presented there at the bottom, looking again to begin at about 8 o'clock with a 15-minute breakfast, and then run courses that will last approximately 45 minutes with a little bit of a break, about a 5-minute break in between those classes. So the classes will run 1, 2, 3, and 4. We would set up a schedule that would be very much like what the students would encounter during a normal school day, and then end the day with a half-an-hour lunch with a 12:15 dismissal. So at this time, I'll take any questions about the secondary program.
Dr. Stoker, could you go up just a little bit to the dollar amounts of the I guess I'm trying to compare the lower grades, our elementary, to our upper grades. The time frame is a shorter time frame for the high school, and we're doing 5.5 hours. The day's only 4.5 hours. What would they be doing for that extra hour, Dr. Hauser? Is that preparation time during that, or?
So yes, Mrs. Husak, that's an extra hour of prep to prepare the lessons for the day. At the high school, we'd be looking to use USA test prep for some of the curriculum and for some of the assessments, but we'll also be using the content from those courses. So the teachers will need to, look through their content and adjust that content each day to meet the needs of their students, to differentiate for the students that they have.
Is that not needed in the elementary level, or are they utilizing different groups of people differently so that it's different?
Sure. So at the elementary level, you'll see 4 hours per day for the teachers. The teachers are actually only instructing for 3 hours throughout the day. So there is an hour of prep built in for that as well. Where you saw that reading or ELA block, that math block, and then that recreation block. Those 3 hours of the day are where the teachers are going to be instructing, so they have an hour of prep beyond that, where then the coordinator, some of the student helpers and things like that take over for the other activity periods. Those teachers do not need to be there, outside of that instructional time, except for that prep time that they're going to be working on. At the high school, they're there for pretty much the day. They don't have those student helpers or some of the other positions. And then they also have that extra hour of prep time on top of that.
Thank you. And then just the last question I have is, for choosing who the coordinator and or teachers, paraprofessionals, how will that work to identify who those individuals would be? And
Sure. So for the coordinator position, I believe the elementary one went out earlier last week, and the secondary one went out at the end of last week. So we put them out like job postings with the qualifications that we're looking for, and then we're looking to see what we get as far as people that are applying, both inside and outside the district. And then we'll do interviews based upon how we feel they meet the needs, and then make a selection from that point forward. When we get to the teaching positions, the paraprofessionals, student helpers, things of that nature, our administrative team will be a part of those interviews as well, but we do want to pull the coordinator in for those conversations, so that the coordinator has some say in who the staff is as well.
thank you.
Sure. And just to give you a grand total for the secondary buildings, we're looking at about $80,000 when we add everything up. So combined with the elementary is about $40,000. We're somewhere about $125,000 or so per year, which obviously seems like it's a lot of money. But again, just to remind you that we are getting that from ESSER, and we do have $600,000 to spend over the course of until September of 2024. So that should keep us within range of what we need to spend. Okay. At this point, I will turn it over to our special education department and Mrs. Dada to talk about the special education parts of this.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to talk about 2 programs that are more about eligibility, and one is the CCS, which is COVID Compensatory Services. This is something that the Bureau of Special Education has mandated that we talk about with each student at the IEP level with their meetings. So students that have learning loss that we've seen is at a minimum, because of our program running 4 days in person since the start of the year. But in order to be eligible for CCS, each IEP team sat down and went over student data. They looked at 3 parts that the Bureau has told us to look at. March, when we left, so previous to March, that data for each IEP goal. Then September, when we returned, and then looking at recouping the skills then in December. I'm happy to report that a lot of our students did recoup the skills by the time we got to December. Those that did not each had a meeting, and that was determined between the IEP team how much time and which goals needed to be remediated. That remediation will be done in the academy, possibly as a pullout, some inclusion. It will depend on the skill and what the student needs. There will be a special education teacher in the elementary summer learning academy, and also at the secondary learning academy. And those will be done individually with those students. That could be speech, it could be OT. At this time, I do not have any data that supports that for COVID compensatory services. However, every year, Northern Lehigh holds an extended school year program. That is also on eligibility. There are 7 criteria that we go through as an IEP team to determine who is eligible for that. That program has not really changed. This year will look just like it did last, well, I lie. COVID last year, it was all virtual. But every year previous to that, it looked the same. It's 3 weeks in July. It is from 9 to 12. The students this year, though, we will be able to serve breakfast and lunch, which is great for our students. There will be 3 teachers, 5 paraprofessionals, and a nurse that we always have to have due to some medical circumstances with students. The speech and language, that's the other thing that I wanted to touch on, extended school year. Speech and language and OT or any related services that's in a student's IEP will be provided during that extended school year time. And I believe that that is all that I have. Yes. Does anybody have any questions?
I do, Mrs. Doda.
Yes.
Sorry, this is Mrs. Martineau. Is the extended school year program being folded into the other program at the middle school or at Slatington? Where will it reside?
So the middle school the extended school year for students in the high school will be still held in the high school because of that room being already set up for their classes. So those students will not have to go to the middle school. Now, just because students were eligible for these two programs, that doesn't mean that they're not eligible or not capable. I guess mine's on eligibility, where the Summer Learning Academy is really on if a student wants to participate, if there's a need for the secondary, if they're credit deficient or something like that. Did I answer your question?
Yes. So if I have a child at the middle school that is in the ESY program, where will they go? Like normally don't they go to Slatington is what I'm asking. So will they all?
Right now, we don't have anybody that's eligible in the middle school.
Okay.
So they would either be high school or Slatington Elementary.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would also like to add, you've heard that, we're going to be providing transportation to the students if they need transportation, and the team has been working closely with Mr. Durr and Brandywine Transportation to make sure that those routes are put in place. You've also heard mention of a nurse for extended school year, like we always do, but really we're going to have nurses available for all students because we're going to have many more students, or we're hopeful that we have many more students that we traditionally have on our campuses during the summer. As an aside, of course, we want to continue to work with our community partner, Northern Lehigh Recreation, and offer them time and space to our facilities. They're going to be working over at Peters Elementary School. So that, and then that leads me into campus security, because we're going to have so much more activity over the summers than we ever had before. Again, hopefully for the next 3 summers. So we're also working with our school police officers to have a presence throughout the summer, not necessarily both of them each day for all hours, but just to make sure that we do have a security presence around our buildings for the students and our staff that are going to be here. That would also be funded through the grants available to us. So we're really trying to make this as comprehensive as possible for learning, teaching, socialization, nutrition, and security for all of our students and staff.
I think Mrs. Martineau had a question. I saw her hand again.
Sorry. I did one for Mr. Link and I think one for Mr. Hauser. Mr. Link, will the summer food program be available to all the students like it was last summer?
I'm happy to report it's going to be available to all students, whether they participate, actually scratch that, to all children living within the boundaries of the district, whether they attend our schools or not, and whether they attend our summer learning programs or not. So yes, it's going to look like it did last summer. And that's going to be available actually for all students through the upcoming school year, not just through the summer, but through the upcoming school year. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has extended that program. We're hopeful. There's some discussion out there at the legislative level that that's just going to become the norm moving forward. And what a great offering that would be for students, because they really shouldn't have to worry about where their meals are coming from.
Thank you. And to be honest, I can't remember whether Mr. Hauser or Mr. Pine touched on it. I wondered if someone could explain what the reasoning is behind applying a 60% grade at the end of the academy program to I believe it was to a previously failed course grade? And how does that work if the course wasn't failed, just remediation was suggested, or if a student didn't fail anything and their family wants to sign up for the program? How does that all work?
Sure, Mrs. Martin, I can address that. The reason the 60% is applied is because it is a course that is taken again and was originally failed. And at the high school level, we do have to share things like GPA, weighted GPA, things of that nature with post-secondary institutions. So one of the things we look at is if a course is remediated through a credit recovery, both the failure needs to be reflected in some way, and then the retaking of that course is reflected as well. And what is standard practice in most school districts is the failure goes away, but the lowest possible passing grade is put on there for GPA reporting requirements, typically because summer programs are also adapted in some way, and it's not the full semester-based or the full 180-day course that is kind of re-instructed. So again, it just has to do with post-secondary reporting. And it's also a good data point for our teachers that are looking at prior performance in prerequisite courses when they're getting incoming students into their higher courses. This way they know that a student one time has failed this, then tried again, they got it, but they might need some extra support in that higher level course.
How does that work for students that didn't fail a course?
If they did not fail the course, the grade that they have stands. The grade would not necessarily change at all because they've already earned that credit. It's reported, and we are simply kind of accentuating their given skills.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will
Mr.
add
Link.
to that.
Sorry, Dr. Stoker, go ahead.
Go ahead. I will add too that we're trying to create some kind of, something to work towards, not just the academic piece, but we're looking to give students something to walk away with, whether that be a shirt or a goodie bag or, some swag stuff for Northern Lehigh. We are looking at the end of this to also give something fun and exciting to students too. So anybody that actually completes the entire program and doesn't miss more than 3 days would receive that.
Sorry, just have one last question for Mr. Link. With obviously what's going on even today with COVID, how will the summer programs work through any of our COVID planning, or do we have the same type of, if there's just a couple cases we have to close, and how is that going to be monitored now that they're all together?
So, and that's a good question. We've been talking about that actually kind of almost at a county level, kind of sharing ideas, because all school districts are going to be offering something like this. Right now, the guidance is that we're going to have to continue to follow our health and safety plan, but knowing that our health and safety plan will adapt to any directives that come out of PDE or the Department of Health. So what I mean by that is I will have to continue to notify the community if there are positive cases. As of now, if there are, for our buildings, 2 cases within that 14-day rolling window, I would have to close it for 48 hours. There we would have the choice of either adding days or transitioning those days to online like we currently do. But we know that in some ways we want this to be a come together type of program for our students, like mentioned earlier. There is some talk that there could be some updates coming in the next 2 to 3 weeks about limitations placed on schools, and some of those may be decreased. I don't know yet for sure, but just know that those conversations are happening. So really we would have to follow the health and safety plans. Right now, the trend is that we're doing really well with our employees, right? Because they're, many of the great majority of them have been vaccinated, and that seems to be helping us a lot. However, unfortunately, it seems like the trend is that the younger children are now becoming more affected by COVID-19, and they're not yet eligible for the vaccinations. So we would honestly continue to work hand in hand with the Department of Health, which is, I was on the phone with them today for probably 20, 25 minutes, kind of talking through a couple scenarios. And I suspect I'll be doing the same leading into and through the summer.
Thank you.
Sure. It's a good question.
Are there any other questions on what we're looking to do as a district for the summer learning opportunities at any of the grade levels? Okay, not hearing any. Do we have the go-ahead from the board to move forward with this plan and start to roll it out more fully to the larger community and start to hire some of these positions and things of that nature?
Yes.
This is Bob Keegan. I'd say go for it.
Ms. Heckman?
Michelle Heckman, definitely.
I think Mr. Fedorcha came on. Mr. Fedorcha, are you out there? So I'm going to say we have 3 of them. Dr. Stoker, I think you guys had a nice plan put in place and presented it very well. Lots of details out there. So keep going. I think that the student body and the community is gonna get great reward from the planning you guys are putting in. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Husak. So then hearing that, we'll move forward with rolling this out to our community. I want to thank our administrative team for all of the time and effort that they've put in. When we started this through the pandemic, we were looking at a hybrid model, then we were looking at an in-person model, and this is almost recreating another model of education moving into the summer. So appreciate the time and effort that everybody's putting into rolling out a summer program for our students, and look forward to the students that sign up and participate. The next 2 items that we have on the agenda for this evening are things that we typically talk about annually. Can everybody see that bullying policy? Okay, so the next one is our bullying prevention initiative. And this is something that we talk about, like I said, annually. This is something that's part of our comprehensive plan. We have a goal of establishing a district system that fully ensures that each member of the district community promotes, enhances, and sustains a shared vision of positive school climate and ensures family and community support of student participation in the learning process. This essentially outlines what we plan to do as a district, and then further down, it actually goes into each of our school buildings and some of the activities and some of the programs that we run in each of those buildings. This has not changed much from what we had in print from last year. Although we weren't able to run a lot of what we had last year because of the pandemic and many of these things were in-person activities, we were looking to carry these over, and this is what we're looking to do for 21-22 school year. So what I'm going to do at this point is hand it over to each of the principals just to highlight maybe 1 or 2 programs, not to fully go through everything, but just to highlight, what they're looking forward to with regard to this moving into the 21-22 school year. And again, this is something that we look to review annually. It is something that we have to upload. Mr. Hill does through our Safe Schools report. Every other year, our bullying prevention program has to be uploaded, but we look at it as a district annually. So I will start at Peters with Mr. Schneiderite, if you want to highlight 1 or 2 of the programs that you have listed.
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Stoker. So we're very proud of our school-wide positive behavior support program. As part of that, we always try to teach daily expectations, responsible, respectful, safe, and proud. We're hoping that we've been awarded Tier 1 fidelity and continued fidelity for a number of years now. We're looking at expanding that to our Tier 2 fidelity next year, which I'm looking forward to. We oftentimes have a lot of outside involvement, such as Valley Youth House. We hope that if that possibility is still if it's still possible to bring these outside groups in, depending on their funding and what they're doing in this sort of hopefully next year's post-pandemic world, we'll be able to continue with those. We oftentimes run sort of initiatives within the school. No name calling week, good manners and social skills that is often taught by Mrs. Cromer will also resume. So, even though this is the plan for it, we will basically at the beginning of next year see what the comfortability level is and look to hopefully even take this list and build upon it based on needs for next year. And I do anticipate that at some point, some trauma-informed care will come into this due to the training that myself, Mr. Marks, Mr. Pine, and Mr. Hauser, I just called him Dr. Hauser because someone else did earlier, and Mr. Hauser, I'm assuming that there'll be some trauma-informed care as a portion of this moving ahead, but what that is not yet known.
Okay, so I'll pick up for Slatington Elementary School. We do have a curriculum that we use that is tied to positive behavior support. Of course, right underneath it says school-wide positive behavior support system, which I always felt was a bit like cheating, including one program to describe how we're supporting another program. But the state actually came out with a tiered approach to bullying response just in the past couple of weeks. And much of it lines up very, very clearly with what we do with our PBIS or SWPPS program, our school-wide positive behavior support. We do have bullying programs that come in. We've had assemblies and things of that nature. And we use our SST process, which is our multi-tiered approach to everything from behavior, social emotional needs, to academics, and provide interventions. And some of those interventions are to everyone. Some of those are more specific as we move up the tiers. And then we have had in the past, and we're looking to have next year, there might be some scheduling issues. We are looking to continue to have some mindfulness training, which is tied to the trauma-informed care trainings that we're looking to also enroll, as well as some character education lessons that we give throughout the course of the year. If you don't remember, in the past, we've had a day in our 6-day cycle, and we're looking to preserve space throughout the course of the year where we are really attending to this, and we're recognizing, again, that whole child need. That has to be our focus if we're going to get the academic outcomes that we really are looking for.
At the middle school level and the high school level, we take full advantage of our orientation evenings for both parents and students to go over what the bullying policy is in our district. We define it. We say what it is and what is not, what appropriate actions the schools will take, and also we'll discuss intervention strategies and mediations, and kind of give parents and students a to-do list if they feel as though there is a bullying scenario, how to report it, to whom to report it, and then what to expect. At the secondary levels, we also tend to see a little bit more cyberbullying occurring with the use of social media and all things smartphones and whatnot. So part of our curriculum, particularly in our technology courses, does include cyberbullying awareness, prevention, and just general education on the situations that can arise from cyberbullying. And our Tier 2 under PBIS, our Tier 2 interventions through things like Project Success and some small group sessions are definitely helpful, particularly at the middle school level for those. The high school level, a little bit more from the Center for Humanistic Change. We'll have those small groups going to come in and help to mediate conflict should we get to that level.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions on our bullying prevention? Okay, again, that's really just to review for, as we do annually. We will upload that to our Safe Schools upload that we have to do, which is typically done in the summer, but it's every other year. And I believe this is not the year that we do it. I believe it's next year that we will upload that. So thank you for everybody that updated that and feedback, and we'll continue to add programs and make sure that we're putting programs in place that help prevent bullying. Anything else on the agenda this evening for the education piece before we move into policy? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and jump into policy. Our first policy that we're looking at this evening is our Title I Parent and Family Engagement Policy. This is actually a policy that we are required to have if we receive federal programs funds and we host a Title I program, which we do. We have a Title I program that we have in both of our elementaries, so our program goes K to 6. So we are required to have both a Title I Parent and Family Engagement Policy at the district level, and we're also required to have one for each of our buildings. So again, that would be for Peters and for Slatington. At our last meeting that we had, our family engagement meeting that we dealt with everything title and federal programs, we actually reviewed the Title I Parent and Family Engagement documents that we have for both Peters and for Slatington. And as is required, we went through with families and asked for any feedback or any ways that we can continue to improve that. So that's what we're doing this evening. We were expected to be monitored for federal programs during the 2021 school year, but because of the pandemic, everything got pushed back a year so that they could continue to monitor the programs that they didn't get to last year. So we are expected for the 21-22 school year to be monitored for our federal programs. So this policy was last reviewed on April 14th of 2020 and last revised in 2019. So there really wasn't much that has changed. Again, if there's anything that anyone sees that we can update or would like us to change, we're certainly open to the feedback. Otherwise, it's just a review of this policy, and then we'd be looking to bring it to the board meeting just to, again, say that we have reviewed it as an annual basis, on an annual basis. So the purpose of this policy is to have meaningful parent and family engagement in our Title I programs. It's a cooperative effort among the school, the parents, and our family members and the community. And in many of the documents that we do have regarding Title I, you'll see those connections made repeatedly. So I'm just going to scroll through the policy. If there's anybody who has anything to add, please, jump in as we go. Under authority, the board directs the district and each of its schools with a Title I program to do the following. I'm not going to read each of these individually, but you'll see that we're looking to have outreach to parents. We're looking to include them as much as possible in the school, in the family and engagement policy to get some feedback, and just generally in our Title I programs. Mr. Schneiderite and Mr. Pine have done a phenomenal job of this. They've really gone above and beyond what the requirements are. As we get further into the policy, you'll see that we are required to have an annual meeting, one meeting annually. Mr. Pine and Mr. Schneiderite, for the most part, are hosting those meetings monthly. And they're really doing a nice job with bringing topics to the agenda, having parents have input on those topics, and then taking those back and making them actionable items. And really continuing to have ongoing improvements in both of those buildings. It's been very difficult during the pandemic to do some of these things, like get the parents and families to come in and volunteer, and a lot of what's written in this policy. But hopefully when we return for the 21-22 school year, we'll be able to have families more engaged actually in the school buildings, like our policy describes. But until that happens, our principals have been doing a really nice job of involving everybody through a virtual means. The next one is accessibility. So this policy just says that we have to make sure that for our families that do not speak English or you have English as a second language, or our migrant families, that we do give them information in a language that makes everything accessible to them. So when we do have families, and this is expanded, it's not just for students in our English language development program, this is now across the district with federal programs. If we know of any students, whether or not they receive English language services, and they have a language that they speak at home other than English, we need to get things out to them in a language that they understand. Under delegation and responsibility, this says the superintendent or designee will comply with all of the requirements of the federal law. And this is really about informed participation, making sure that parents and other family members understand that what resources, information, and school reports are available to them so that they can make informed decisions in their child's education. Under guidelines, again, this is where I talked about there is the requirement to have an annual meeting. At Northern Lehigh, we really have gone above and beyond that. We've had monthly meetings, and we've actually focused 2 of those meetings specifically on Title I. Last meeting, we went through all of our documents. We were sending out a survey in both of our elementary buildings. We're coming back in May, and we're going to have a discussion about the results of that survey and how we can continue, again, to make things better for our Title I programs and just in general through the elementary schools. Then building capacity for parent and family engagement. Again, this is just helping the families better understand what's happening in schools. So what different ways can we get information out to them? How can we let them understand what their test scores mean for their children, and those types of pieces of information. So how do we get information out to them, and really how do we help them to understand what we are disseminating to them? The next one is coordinating parent and family engagement strategies. So this is looking at data and understanding the needs of families. So gathering feedback, which was what our parent survey will be doing that we sent out, and we'll be getting that data back to review in May, and that'll help inform how we can better engage families in their child's education. The next one is the annual parent and family engagement policy evaluation. This essentially just says that we need to go through and review and assess if that is covering what we want it to, and if it's not, we have to make sure that we're updating it, and this gives us some information on how that should happen. Same thing is true with the school parent and family compact. This is really what the school is going to do, what the parent is going to do, and we actually include in ours the student. So each of those parties has some piece of that child's education at stake. So what is each of those pieces going to do? What are we going to do as a school to ensure that a student is learning? What are the parents going to do at home to help their child learn? And then what is the student going to do, so that they have some buy-in in their education as well. So that compact is what each of those parties will do. And we come back together each school year to review that and to update that based on the changing needs of the school. The next one is Title I funds. This says that if we accept funds from the federal government for Title I, there are certain rules and regulations that we have to follow. These describe what those rules and regulations are. And so we just have to adhere to those if we're going to take those monies. And those are things that are monitored as part of that cycle, but also when we submit our grants, there's information that we include in our budget with that grant, and then also our program goals and things of that nature that really spell out if we're using our money appropriately or not. And then the last one is documentation of parent and family engagement practices. So we have to keep evidence on everything that we do regarding Title I. And anytime that we're involving families. So that's been difficult too, because we have not been meeting in person. So it's hard to keep sign-in sheets for anything that we run, but we've been doing screenshots. We've been, including people in Zoom sessions, having exit tickets, looking for feedback in different ways so we can document how much and in what different ways we have included families in the family engagement and in the school. Any questions or feedback on that policy at the district level? And again, just to remind you, it is something that we also have at the building level, which is a little bit more specific to what happens in each of those buildings. Okay, not hearing any feedback. We would just be looking to move that to the board level for our upcoming board meeting, just to essentially say that we have reviewed it. At this point, there doesn't look to be any changes, so we would not be looking for a first or second reading, but just essentially to say that we have reviewed it annually. Do we have the go ahead from the board to do that?
Board members?
Yep, that sounds great to me.
Sounds great to me.
Sounds good, Dr. Stoker. Just as a reminder, thank you to Mr. Pine. May 8th, I got it, survey due. So if you haven't got it, May 8th, survey due. But yes, Dr. Stoker, that's fine. That was reviewed. Thank you.
And Dr. Stoker, Mr. Fedorcha is having problems with his microphone. It won't unmute for some reason. He wants the committee tonight to know that he supports Policy 918 going, and also that he supports all the summer programs, and he's very happy with how those programs were designed, and thanks the team for putting those together.
Thank you for sharing that.
Certainly.
Okay, then we will move the family engagement policy to the board level for next month. And we will look at our next policy, which is policy 305, which is the draft of employment of substitutes. And we have Mrs. Molatoris here with us this evening to talk about further detail of this policy. For Mrs. Molatoris, I will put the policy up and just tell me how you'd like me to scroll through it.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So unlike Dr. Stoker, my policy is embedded with a whole bunch of changes. This policy was part of when we went to our board docs and the merging of those. This is one of those policies that we had not looked at yet. The last time it was revised was November of 2017, and a lot of it was very outdated. So we kind of used this opportunity now to update a lot of it, even putting in some of our language for our permanent subs and stuff, which are currently not anywhere in any of our policies. So the first thing it talks about is the purpose of the policy, which is obviously for our professional and classified employees. So those are our custodial, maintenance, cafeteria workers, paraprofessionals, anybody that is not considered one of our professional employees. So it basically talks about that this policy will be the overall encompassing policy for how we treat those employees. The authority is the board shall provide annually the names of the potential substitutes, which is what we currently do. So that language really hasn't changed. We just changed classified personnel to substitute employees. So that is just that we hire them annually on the board, and we do present those names every August. And then throughout the year, as new people want to come on to substitute in our district, we do present those names to the board to get them approved. The guidelines. So the area that's going to change in here is a candidate's misstatement of fact of material for employment or termination can basically dismissal by the board. Utilization of substitutes, this is prior to the board meeting that you do give us permission to do that. There are lots of times when, in order to keep the continuity of the education moving forward, it serves us in our best interest to hire those people and get them on board as soon as possible. So that section talks about that, the utilization of the subs prior to the board approval. And again, to maintain continuity in the educational program. So that changed a little bit. If anybody's looking at your own one that we sent out on Friday, we did tweak it a little bit again this morning. When I compared it to the old policy, there was a couple of words missed here or there. Copy and paste sometimes isn't everybody's favorite friend. So I reviewed it this weekend and just saw a couple of areas that we needed to change it up a little. So Dr. Stoker, if you want to, yep, the next page. Next page talks about the pre-employment requirements. So the first part of that, the first paragraph basically talks about that we will review all of the criminal history record checks, and basically will not hire anybody who we are not permitted to hire due to law. And that verbiage kind of gives us the out that although we have candidates that apply, if they do not meet the requirements of state and federal laws that allow us to employ them, we are not going to employ them. The second paragraph there talks to you about the clearances that we're going to ask for. So we're going to get that criminal history record check. We're going to do that child abuse history clearance. We're going to do that FBI. And now those new that went into effect, I believe in 2013, 14, that Act 168, which is the new one where we have to send to all new candidates that want to work for our district, if they have worked anywhere in another school district or a setting where they were in direct contact and support of children, has to be a paid position, not a volunteer position. their employers are required to fill out this form. It's basically to make sure that there is no, I think a lot of it is sexual misconduct, stuff that happened through them in their prior employment that we need to be made aware of. You also must do it for your current employer, no matter who that employer might be. So everybody should normally have one in their file, unless they happen to be just a homemaker or somebody who currently at the time we hired them has never worked for any kind of an educational setting, daycare, camp, or something where they would have had direct contact with children and supervision, and they currently are not working. So those are the only people that would not have this form somewhere in their file. And then we have the new form that also came out a few years ago. It's Act 24, and that you have to report on the PD 600 form. There is a bunch of lists of reportable offenses that you can be charged with, that when you start employment, you have to fill out form. A lot of it is, there's really sexually explicit ones on there, but then there's also ones related to drugs and alcohol as well. So those forms have to be filled out. We have to review them. And if any of our employees are charged with any of these offenses or arrested, let me rephrase that. This is arrest and conviction report. So even if they are arrested for this being a charge against them, they need to fill out this form. If they don't fill out this form, then we have grounds for dismissal and removal because they were not upfront and told us about this. And then again, it then will go to the fact if they ever get arrested for it. But at first it is, if they ever get convicted for it, then we look at it again. But on the front end, if they get arrested, they have to fill out this form. The next one is compensation. And so this talks about our substitute support employees. So our substitute support employee position shall be paid on an hourly basis, and those hourly bases get approved every year on the board agenda, and that is through our auxiliary salary schedule. That auxiliary salary schedule will be going to the Finance Committee meeting this Wednesday night, and it will be on approval Monday evening for final approval. The next group is our substitute professional employees. So we have the first group is the per diem substitutes. So these are everyday. Shelley Pender will call them in the morning and say, I have a math teacher at the high school. We need you to come in if you're available to work. So they just get paid on a per diem basis at a rate set annually by the board. That is also on our auxiliary salary schedule. We did incorporate this time into this policy that a substitute shall be paid 1/2 the per diem rate for teaching less than 1/2 and 1/2 if they teach at least 1/2, because we do have a position at the middle school currently that is only a half-time position. So prior to this, we didn't have that anywhere in a policy. So we wanted to make it clear that if you're coming in and subbing for only a half-time person, you're only going to be paid for half of the day, and then you'll be able to leave afterwards. I will tell you that does happen, but normally we are short subs, and that sub will end up working a full day because we will send them to somewhere else in the district where we might be short a sub for the day, and they'll fill in the second half of the day someplace else. So although it's in there, a lot of times we do end up using them full day. We just shift them through the district and they go someplace else for the other half of the day. Basically, it also says when available, substitutes teaching in the school district shall hold a valid certificate for the position they are filling. We try and do that. That's not always possible, just because sometimes it's hard to find that science or math teacher at the high school level. So at that point in time, we just find a sub to come in to sub for the day. The next group is our short-term substitutes. This is a new group that we want to add to the district, which is why we wanted to bring it here to policy. Currently, our old policy had that if a teacher if a substitute teacher comes in and serves in any one position for 31 days or more, they immediately get put on step and they get everything in the teacher's contract. So that means we're paying for health benefits. They're getting $280 or $290 a day, whatever that per diem rate works out for a step one bachelor's. And what's happening is there's a lot of times where people will only go out for like 4 or like 6 or 8 weeks. And these people will go on our, teacher's step column and everything in the teacher's contract for like 2 weeks. So we're paying for like a month's worth of health benefits, or they can opt out for a month and they're getting an increase like $280, $290, whatever that per diem rate is. I reached out to a lot of other school districts. A lot of other school districts have this short-term group of people. So these are people that would serve like over 31 days, but less than half a year. So less than what a teacher's contract in our district would be 95, because they're contracted to work 190 days. So these people would have a separate rate. Currently, our rate is for the first 1 to 10 days, it is $100. 10 days and over, it's $120. So other districts look at what's that medium range there, like what can we pay them that will entice them to stay here for a longer period of time, which is the conversation we will have with finance on Wednesday night. And then that becomes their rate. But there is no fringe benefits or anything else associated with that position. The only thing they will get would be an increased rate of pay, maybe $170, maybe $150. We're going to talk about that on Wednesday night. IU is currently doing a survey for me that I should hopefully have back by Wednesday night, and I'll know more of where we need to be in the hourly wage. Either or, putting this language in here, although we're going to pay a little bit more than that $120, it's going to save us money in the long run, because we're not having to pay that per diem rate of $280 or $290, whatever that might be, for these teachers and for these substitutes that come in at like day 31, and we're not paying health benefits. They're just going to receive a little bit of a higher pay, but we're saving on the back end of all that other money that we're paying out right now, because they're going immediately onto the teacher's contract. So that's the issue that we wanted to bring up with short-term substitutes and get them on the agenda. I'm sorry, in this policy, to address that. And then we're going to readjust then our long-term substitutes. So our long-term substitutes would be our group of substitutes that are in here for more than half a year. So I have that teacher that's out on a sabbatical for the entire year. I get that person in here from day one. They will go on step, they will get everything afforded in the teacher's contract, and they will be part of our long-term substitute. So we know from the get-go that they are going to make it past that 95 days. We will put them on this step. If somebody comes in, let's just say, and they start out in a short-term position because we think it's somebody on maternity, and they say they're going to be back on like day 65 or day 70. And then all of a sudden, as a lot of times, and I would have been the same way, I want to stay home an entire year with my little one. So I decide I'm going to extend it. What happens then through this policy is we also are saying we will readdress that then. So we will then take them from what would have been a part-time position or short-term position and move them into the long-term substitute position. So we would recalculate their pay for the entire year. They would get the pay back to day one at the full rate that they should have been getting all along. So it kind of leaves the door open for us for moving people around between that short-term to that long-term position if we would need them for that. And then the last thing on this is our permanent subs. We talk about our permanent subs and that those permanent subs are employed for 180 days. They are here every day of the year that all of our students are here. There could be potential time throughout the year that in service days, we may find that it would benefit them, the students and the district, if they come in to work on an in-service day. So this policy addresses that at our request. If we ask you to come in, you come in, we will pay you your stipend for that day for coming in for that professional development training. Again, all of these rates are set annually by the board and will be discussed Wednesday at finance. And the permanent subs will receive medical and dental benefits, but that's the only thing that they get within their agreement. And then other than that, the delegation of responsibilities, we will develop administrative regulations for the employment of our substitutes, which we kind of have a back plan of how we do that. So that will be put back in the writing. We'll review those. And then the last one, the superintendent or designee shall recommend for retention, again, on the board's approved substitute list only. So basically every year we will come back to the board, and as long as they have been evaluated and they're doing their part according to Act 82 and 2012, we will evaluate. Some of them, not all of them, are day-to-days, normally not, but those long-term subs and our permanent subs, and probably some of our short-term subs, depending upon how many days they're here, because anything over 45 days that they are teaching in a subject area under their certificate counts towards validity of their certificate. So they will need an evaluation that they've been evaluated, so that when they go to convert their certificate, they have the evaluations that are needed. So that's pretty much it for this policy. There's a lot going on with it, but again, it hasn't been updated since 2007. So we're looking at it's a 14-year-old policy. So I'm going to open it up if anybody has any questions about anything, and I'll hopefully answer them.
Hi, Sherry, it's Gail.
Yes.
Just a quick question in regards to the long-term, permanent term subs where fringe benefits are provided for those
Correct.
areas. And I did see where if an employee would happen to leave prior to that 95-day in like the long term, what is recalculated? Is that salary? Is that fringe benefits also? I'm just going back to insurance cost and hearing what those numbers were. And
yeah. So basically, while they were here, we would have had to have paid for their benefits, and there's no way that you can go back and take those benefits away. So it would just be that the benefits at that point in time would be gone. Like the minute that they leave, we would stop the benefits for them. The pay calculation, yes, that's exactly right. We would go back and we'd recalculate. So if somebody commits to us that they were going to be here for 95 days, and all of a sudden in 62 days, they end up finding a job somewhere permanently and they leave, we're going to recalculate their salary and say, you should have only been getting that short-term rate during this time. As for the benefits, we're never going to be able to go back and get that, because if they used it, it's just, you're not going to be able to recoup that. So we're going to recoup the salary as much as we can. Talking to other districts, they said they really don't see that happen much, because most people end up saying, we can hold you for 60 days. So, because, believe it or not, from the state, it's a slap on the patty if you would leave anyway. It's nothing, but it is a letter that they would get from the state saying that you had a commitment here and you left. So when I meet with people to tell them they're in a long-term sub, I will end up telling them, you've got 95 days here. So I understand if you're going to be looking for another job, because this isn't permanent. But please understand that if you leave, we are recalculating salary and that kind of stuff, and you could potentially owe us money back. So I want to be upfront with people just so that they know that as well, and hopefully entice them not to leave, because that's not what we want to happen, because we want the education to be continuous and with the same teacher in that classroom through the entire time.
Absolutely. And I think that's where I was getting to. Those salaries, one thing, but the fringe benefits are another. And if they leave, how do we save that education, continual education, and save in our own thought process of, okay, is there some other stipulation we can put in there that if they leave, something's paid back? I don't know, just beyond just salary to kind of
and I'm going to tell you, and it, Gail, it's hard to do, because you can't do that in the teacher's contract either. I mean, any teacher could leave tomorrow and we would have paid all this year's health benefits and they wouldn't have completed the year, but their benefits stop at that point. The only thing in the contract is that if they would leave and they had paid for tuition, they would owe us the tuition back. So that is clearly marked in the contract. Nothing with benefits is. So that's because they actually become on that teacher's contract. They become hired underneath that teacher's contract and get everything that's in those teacher's contract. But I'm open to suggestions if you can come up with something.
they have to follow the teacher's contract? Do they get hired under that? Can it be separate?
Well,
or is
the
that
issue
normal
is-
practice? I guess.
it is normal practice. It is normal practice after 95 days
Yeah.
that they get hired to fill that position, and they get everything afforded in the teacher's contract. Correct. And that's really because you don't want it to become a revolving door. If you don't offer that, but somebody else at Parkland leaves and they're willing to give them that position and a contract that's going to give them for a year, benefits and everything else, they're walking out my door and heading over there. So, and in order to keep in line with what everybody else is doing, I mean, and it is what we've just always been very generous, putting them on it at day 31 versus making them be here for half a year prior to that. That's the difference.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, does anyone else have any questions on that policy? Not hearing any, do we have the go-ahead from the board to move that for first reading to the board meeting next week?
I'm going to look to
Sure.
the board members.
This
Sounds
is Bob
good.
Keegan, sure.
Ms. Heckman? Going once, going twice. I'm going to say we got half of them. Dr. Stoker, we'll go ahead and have that for on the board agenda for next week.
All right, thank you. Anything else regarding policy for the Ed Policy meeting tonight?
Eric, is there anybody online that would like to comment?
We do not have any comments or questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, hearing nothing, then Mrs. Husak, would you like to call for an adjournment?
Absolutely, sounds good. We can adjourn the Education and Policy meeting, and those who would like to stay and attend the Extra and Co-Curricular Committee meeting, that will happen right after this.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess that goes back, right?
Yep.
All right. So thanks for those who were attending the last committee meeting and those who are staying with us for this committee meeting. This is the Extra and Co-Curricular Committee meeting. This will also be continued and being recorded and posted on the NLSD Media YouTube channel. Just a couple quick topics on the agenda today. So it does look like I will be turning it over to Mr. Geist this evening on update on spring sports and an online box office option.
All
Mr.
right,
Geist,
thank you.
good evening.
Thank you, Mrs. Husak. In regards to our spring sports, kind of a review of the entire year. Our fall and winter seasons were abbreviated, so therefore the postseason was expanded. In converse, the spring season has mostly, for the most part, for everybody, has a full season for all spring sports. So we're going back to a normal spring sports plan. PIAA is looking at a normal spring sports playoff season, as well as District 11 and as well as the Colonial League. So as for instance, with basketball in the wintertime, we expanded our playoffs to 8 teams in the Colonial League. Now here in the spring, we're back to 6. So the division winners and then plus 4 wild cards. So with that, everyone is following their respective health and safety plans. So those are moving forward. So it's a really positive step in the right direction to kind of get back to normalcy at this point. So that's kind of the update at this point for spring sports. Field any questions if there's anything in regards to track and field, baseball or softball. All right, hearing none, one of the options that we have, and this kind of came on with all of the different guidance that we've had in fan restriction, as well as cashless options. This has been brought to the forefront, and I just want to kind of show a quick 30-second video of hometown ticketing. And just should be seeing my screen now. And just show everybody this quick video.
Sell online tickets directly from your school's website. Scan digital or printed tickets with the Hometown Gate app. And get immediate access to ticket revenue with real-time reporting at no cost to your school. It's that easy to bring touchless ticketing to your hometown. Hometown. Fast scans, happy fans.
Okay, so that's more or less a real quick 30-second presentation in regards to the hometown ticketing. We used a similar platform this past fall for our district playoff games when we had home games. It was very successful as we ran through that. What we find is that a number of fans and parents are traveling without cash, and a number of them are requesting credit card purchasing, and we currently don't have that option for any of our events. So this would at least create an option for parents and fans to purchase tickets in advance, as well as even if they were in the parking lot, they could do a cashless transaction via their phone. And all the fees go to the person purchasing the ticket. There's no cost to the school district. We would also maintain our cash option at our ticket booths. So as an example, if varsity football game, we have an adult ticket for $5. The consumer or fan or parent can purchase the ticket for $5 cash, see the game as normal. If they know that they might be running late and they're even a home or away fan, they can purchase that ticket at home, have a paper copy, or have the QR code on their phone, walk up to the gate and come in, and they don't have to stand in line at the ticket sales. So this is looking for an option to help us give more options to fans and parents for contests, and looking to run this for our winter season as well as varsity football for this season. So ticket costs, and I threw this Friday in the report, looking at for fans and parents, if they wanted to use the credit card option, would be less than $1.50 per ticket if they wanted to go that particular option. So at this point, I'll look to field any questions in regards to a online box office.
So, Mr. Geist, just for clarity, it would be less than $1.50 per ticket service fee on top of the price of the ticket.
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
And then also, I'm sorry if you did mention this, but I think we also discussed if the board would want to move forward with this additional option, that people that utilize the QR code on their phones, we would actually, instead of having our workers use their own personal phones to scan their phones, we would actually purchase the QR guns. That
is correct. Mrs. Molatoris and I are working with the vendor. If this goes through, we would look at certainly purchasing those particular hardware options. The other thing in the report, I did mention, it gives us options for free events at no cost to us, such as graduation, proms. If the musical fall play wants to use it, that's an option. They're not burdened to it. They can certainly continue to use their old option, but it also provides another option for other events that are ticketed. And if we ever went to a reserve seating, it gives us that option, or if we can have just general admission like we normally do. So there's a lot of options with this.
Thank you, Mr. Geist, for the options. I do have a quick question. I know in the fall last year, even in the wintertime, it was limited number of tickets for different groups. Will this allow us to put a limit on that? But then also, if you're also going to do in-person sales, cash sales, how are you going to coordinate when you're over and not, and who's in working through that?
What you do is you assign a certain number of tickets per player, and you can have the individual identify which player. And this was used actually in the fall for the football playoff games. And when we played our game at Whitehall, each athlete was given a code, or the code was given to the team, and then each person purchasing the ticket had to identify which player they were associated with. And then this option with a cash option, again, depending on where we're at with any specific guidance from the state, we can increase or decrease per student. And then at that point, we would do pre-sale, and then from there, we'd have to use the old paper and pencil method for cash sales. So that's kind of where we'd be at.
Thank you. It was so easy using the QR code when we went into games. So
yes,
the trend that we're all headed to, right?
Sure, and you know, there is there's a large number of people that don't want to use cash or don't carry cash, so we want to be able to give them the option as well. And we've had a number of people that showed up at games and are flabbergasted that we don't accept credit cards. I before this year, I wasn't aware of any high school that accepted credit cards. So
I think I actually just read an article over the weekend that Coca-Cola Park is going to all cashless systems for the Iron Pigs games. They're just removing that option.
This is Gary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Finally, I'm sorry. I do apologize. I don't know what's wrong with my computer, but it's the first time and it's very frustrating. But I do think it's a great idea, Mr. Geist.
Thank you, Mr. Fedorcha. And again, this is just want to provide options for all of our fans and parents. Any other questions?
No, but I think you have a lot of benefit too by doing it online. There's a traceability to the funds and things like that, and makes it a little bit easier for those taking tickets and selling tickets and all of that to have a little bit more traceability around that. So thank you for looking into it, Mr. Geist.
Absolutely. Mr. Link, I'll turn it over to you in regards to our next steps.
So it sounds like we have the support of the board members on the committee to take this to the full board Monday evening for approval. Mr. Geist, I think that this is a year-to-year arrangement. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
So we could do this annually, kind of moving forward at a board meeting. I think this is a good year to try it. I think there's good logic to try it this year, and if it works well, we can continue and look to expand it into, like you said, our theater program and other ticketed events throughout the district.
I'm sorry, Mr. Link and Mr. Geist, I have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
If a community member, parent, patron would leave the facility and want to come back, is there a way for that to be reinstated so that the same person comes back?
We have hand stampers.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've instituted those hand stampers for a long time. Worst case, if somebody was, and I'll use the word, skeeved out by ink on their hand, we've used ticket stubs, or hey, I'm just going to run out to my car, get a blanket. Our gate people have pretty good memories, exactly who those individuals are. So it's usually a non-issue.
Sounds good. Thanks. Just want to try to keep it that way, right?
Absolutely. So hearing support and, no opposition, I think we'll move forward, Mr. Geist, taking it to the full board.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's see, Mrs. Husak, that's the end of this agenda this evening. Mr. Hill, anybody looking to speak on this this committee?
We do not have any questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So Mrs. Husak, I'll turn it back over to you for adjournment.
Thank you, everyone. Just want to remind everybody on this meeting, our next scheduled meeting, this group meets every other month. So unfortunately, we won't see each other for this meeting until August 2nd. The education policy does meet next month. So just a reminder that this is a little bit extended till we see all of these fun faces on the screen again. So thanks for everybody's time. I don't believe there's anything else. Going once,
Mr.
going
Geis,
twice.
Mr. Geis, will you keep us posted as far as any changes between now and August?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In regards to anything PIAA, District 11, Colonial League, or even this ticketing outlet that we have. Sure, absolutely.
Sounds good, everyone. I hope everybody has a great night. Have a good week. Stay safe. And we'll see you guys either Wednesday or next Monday for our board meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.
You too.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.